Hi, in today's video I'm going to be covering how to manage your root files. And what I mean by that is configuration files that are stored in the root of the system as opposed to your home directory. So typically you'll manage your home files by putting them under Git, symlinking them using a program like Stow or various other options. But how do you manage root files that require admin permissions? So what I'm going to do is show you the Git repository I have for my root config files. So if I run the tree command, what you'll see is it will print out the directory structure and the files that make up my root config. So these are all the files that I typically copy across to these locations at the root of the system, things like xorg, DH client, resolve, things for networking. And we'll have things for systemd services, maybe unbound, which is a DNS server. We also have things like scripts and user local bin, or X-session files to start your window manager, ZSH completions. So the issue is, how would you deploy all of these files to the correct locations in root? One way is to actually physically copy them across. So you can actually say, okay, sudo cp copy this file across to that location. But then sometimes you actually have to create the directory structure for some of these things. So you have to create the directory structure. You've got to copy the file across. You've got to set the permissions on it and do that for each of these files that you want to deploy. So what I'm going to do is show you the way I handle that, and this is using Emacs and org mode. Now the advantage of this is I have a single configuration file here, and I can deploy all of my files for root with a single set of keystrokes. No copying stuff across. I'm going to copy all the files across, it'll make any directories that will needed, and it will set the permissions all in one go. So I'll show you how this works. So this first section here is about how you tangle files, and we have two options. We can tangle the entire document at once. So by running Control-C, Control-V-T, that will write out all of the source code blocks to the correct locations, create any directories needed, and set the permissions in one go. It will just prompt me for my password. That's it. We can also tangle individual code blocks by running Control-U, Control-C, Control-V, T. And we can actually also tangle from the command line. So we can actually run Emacs and tangle a entire org file from the command line instead of opening it with Emacs. But what I'm going to show you here is the dot file. So what I'll do is I'll come across to the bin. So this is user local bin. So I have a load of scripts that I keep in user local bin that are run with root permissions. So if I just come across here, we have user local bin. You can see these are all the scripts here that basically I have to copy across to this directory. So if I come across into Emacs, first of all, what we have is this is the source code block with the script in it. And first of all, what we have is a name. We give the code block a name, and on this second line here, we can define what type of language this is. So this is a shell script. It could be a config file, it could be a Python script, it could be Emacs, it could be C, and there are loads of different languages that Emacs org mode, org babel supports. And basically what it will do is it will give you syntax highlighting. So you can see here I've got all the syntax highlighting for this script. And this is basically a script I use with transmission to basically stop and start tolerance and stuff. So that's the first step, is we define a code block for the script and give it a name. then the next thing that we do is we're using something called NoWeb. And what you'll see is if I expand that here, you'll see this section here, Black Rain, this corresponds to the name of this code block. So instead of actually putting the code in this section here, we can reference it. Because what I'm doing is I'm actually writing out the code block to two places simultaneously. I'm writing out to the user local bin directory, but also the current directory. So as you can see here, this is the Git repository for my root config files, and I have the directory structure that I'd have to create on root for all these files. So I have a local copy of all these files in my Git repository. And again, you could copy all this stuff across manually, but I'm showing you a better way to do that with just a couple of keystrokes because I'm lazy. So what we're doing first of all here is we're using this NoWeb, and what this NoWeb is basically allow us to use this block of code here to reference the other block of code, and this is where the magic happens. Tangle. What we're doing is we're writing out something that requires admin permissions. So the way we do that is by prefixing the file path with /doas : or if you were using sudo, that would be /sudo : and then the path to the file we're going to write out, and also the tangle mode with the identity, and this sets the permissions in octal format. So 0755 is an executable script. Okay, so that allows us to create the directory structure, copy the file across, and set the permissions in one go. And again, what we have down here is we have our second block here, and this has got a different name. And what this does is this tangles or writes out that file to the current directory, which is the Git repository. So it creates, you can see the difference here is this has the / here, so that's putting it in the root user local bin Black Rain, whereas this one doesn't have the /, so that's just creating the user local bin Black Rain script in the current directory. Okay, so I do that for all of my blocks of code. So just come across here. You can see that's the same for all these scripts here. They all have their own names, then blocks of code, and then a corresponding section down here where I actually tangle them right out to different locations at once. So that's the bin directories. So then we've got stuff like xorg. So this is for setting the display not to, turn off automatically. And again, these are all going to have different directory paths. So like etc x11 xorg.config.d /monitor10-monitor.conf permissions 644. But that's the issue, is that you got to copy all these config files into all these different locations, and it's a real pain to do it manually. So what this allows us to do is basically have all the code blocks in one document, and then the locations where we want to write them out to. So this is like, for instance, an xmonad x session. So this is the desktop entry for the GDM login manager, so that I can log into xmonad. And again, what we do here is we've got the path to where we actually want to write that config out to. And the same for all these other files here. So what I'm going to do is actually come across to the desktop and show you this in practice. So this is basically a demo. This is a org file, and this is basically, it's going to be a test where we have a single script here, and we've got a bit of code here. So this says echo Emacs kicks Vim's arse up and down the street and back again. Okay, and I want to deploy this excellent script to my user local bin directory. So if I come back up here, tangle document, I can tangle the entire document by running Control-C, Control-V-T. That's going to write out all the source code blocks at once into the correct locations. Again, or I can tangle the code blocks individually by running Control-U, Control-C, Control-V-T on the source code block. So let me just come back here. There's nothing. Let me just come back to the desktop. I'll just remove that file, user. Okay. So we've only got the single document in here. I'll come across to Emacs. And what I want to do is I want to write this script here out to user local bin. So we've got this section here where what we're doing is we're referencing the demo script. Let me just make that a bit smaller. And we're going to write it out to user local bin demo script, but at the same time we're going to write it out to user local bin demo script in the current directory. So all I've got to do, again, come across here, tangle the document, Control-C, Control-V-T, and it's going to prompt me for the password, Control-C-V-T. It hasn't prompted me for the password, and that's because a couple of minutes ago before I did the video, I actually ran the command with DOAS, and it executed everything. Now, if you're using DOAS, you'll know there's a feature called persistence. Basically, that's similar to sudo. So when you use sudo and you type out your command once, it will be persistent for about 5 minutes, so you don't have to keep typing out your password with sudo. There's an equivalent thing with DOAS, and on OpenBSD it uses the kernel to actually keep track of the persistent values. But on Linux, what it does is it uses something similar to sudo, where it sort of uses timestamps in a file. So I don't have persistence enabled, but I can still tangle this document multiple times, Control-C-V-T, let's tangle the document without prompting me for my password. That's another advantage. So if I switch to the terminal now, here, what you'll see is it's actually created this user directory. So it's created user local bin demo script in the Git repository directory, and it's also written that file out to user local bin demo script. And you can see here it's also set the permissions. So now if I run the script, demo script, Emacs kicks Vim's arse up and down the street and back again. Yeah, it does. Sorry, Vim users. So that's the advantage, is that we can have the scripts all in a single file. So rather than actually, cd etc, cd, etc x11 sudo vi some file, copy some file across, set the permissions, go to all these different directories in the root directory you need to copy stuff across to. Keep it all in one file. You edit stuff in the file here. So what I do is do it like this, and this is how you run Control-C and the single quote. It opens it up in a sort of mode here, and I can edit the script. Sorry, Vim users, but it's true. Vim can't test with Emacs. Yeah. Now, Control-C-V-T, tangle the document. And if I use a local bin, you can see it's changed the script in the user local bin demo script directory in the current directory here. And the same code has been written out to use a local bin. So demo script. Yep. Emacs kicks Vim's arse up and down the street and back again. Sorry, Vim users, but it's true. Vim can't test with Emacs. No, it can't. So that's the advantage of this, is that you've got a single configuration file with all your source code blocks, syntax highlighting. It will create the directories, it will set the permissions, and all I've got to do is, being lazy bastard I am, is run Control-C, Control-V-T, and I'm done. That's it. No more copying stuff across, no more making directories, setting permissions. I just run a single keyboard shortcut, and everything's done in seconds. It's just created everything. So I can, create another script here. So if I wanted to create another script, we'll call this demo script 2. And what we need to do is change the name here, demo script 2. And let's change this to something else. Happy New Year. Seems appropriate. What we then do is I can then just copy this and change some stuff. So all this demo script 2. I just come across here, and again you need to change this no web section. This section has to correspond to the name here. The name here is demo script 2. So in this section here, instead of writing out the same block of code, don't repeat yourself, keep it simple, stupid, all that kind of stuff, we reference it. So demo script 2, just come across here and change all of this, and now tangled 4 code blocks. So if I come back here, run tree, you'll see it's now created user local bin, demo script, and demo script 2. And if I come across to user local bin, you see I've got demo script 2, demo script 2. Happy New Year. Okay, and suppose I'm a miserable git. Yeah, I changed that to bar humbug. So I can either tangle the entire document, or if I just want to tangle that individual thing. Across here, with the cursor on this begin source block here, I run Control-U, Control-C, Control-V-T. So I just keep the control button pressed down until I press T. Control-V-T, tangled. That. Yep, bar humbug. So if I now run demo script 2, bar humbug. So I don't actually have to, come across user local bin, sudo vi demo script 2, edit it, put in my password, edit it, then, it'd be like, sudo change mod plus x demo script 2 long. Yeah. Much less work, much less work. So if I just come across to the directory here, so again, all my dot files one place, and come through and quit Emacs by mistake. I've got all my config files in one place, so everything's just in one place. I don't have to go through open multiple files. You got dozens of files. What you're gonna have to do? You're gonna have to edit them individually, aren't you? You're gonna have to. You got half a dozen scripts that you keep in your bin directory. You want to change them. You're gonna have to open 6 individual scripts. If you've got 20 scripts, you're gonna have to open 20 files. Why do that when you can open one file, have them all in one place? No brainer. So, got all the files here. I've got the syntax highlighting. Yeah, and then I can just deploy them. And I have the locations for where I deploy them. It creates the directories, sets the permissions, all in one go. So it's much more convenient because I just edit one file. I don't have to go to each of these individual locations to use a local bin, etc. systemd, etc. x11, xorg.conf.confd, you know, that kind of stuff. I don't have to go to all those directories. I don't have to remember which of these, 20, 30 files are actually copied into place, because, as I said, normally, if I come across here, ubuntu root, run tree again, if I was going to do this manually, I'm going to have to copy all of these files across manually, aren't I? So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 20, 25 files. I'm going to have to copy them all across manually, make sure all these directories are created, set all the permissions. How long is that going to take you versus keystroke in Emacs that takes 2 seconds? Yeah, just total no-brainer. The other advantage, I now have a complete record of all the changes in the files. So typically, you can see here's all the sort of, the changes I've made and stuff. This is TIG. This is a command line encursive interface to Git that will show you all these different commits and the changes. But that's the other issue, is that you can copy stuff across and manually edit it in place at the root, but you've got no record of what you've done. Yeah, you make a mistake and you think, oh God, what did I do? You got no idea. You don't have a record. Doing it this way, you have everything. You have the complete directory structure in the Git repository, like this. So I can see the complete directory structure that's going to be created. I have a record of all the changes. And then when I want to change something, I just open one file. So, like this would be like all my systemd stuff. So, for instance, transmission. So this is like running transmission under my sort of username. And then when I want to tangle it, is again, I can either come across and manually do it, but I'm not going to come across and manually do all these code blocks. But if I'm working on a particular code block, I can just tangle that code block individually. And again, we have the name, we've got the begin source, no web, tangle, the doas, and we reference the code block there. So this is basically, we've got 2 code blocks here. It's going to write it out to the root directory and the current directory, and create the directory structure all in one go. So that's basically my way of managing my root.files. Instead of opening 20, 25 files, editing them manually, copying them into place, making sure the directories exist, the permissions, have I copied this file, as the one in have I changed anything, in the file in the root directory, as opposed to what I've got a record of. No more guesswork. Yeah. I don't have to edit. I don't have to go into all these different directories. I just open this, come across here, I want to change something, I change it, save it, deploy it, sets the permissions. And again, the other advantage is I don't have to, I enter my password once, done. Not like if you're editing these files individually, in with sort of sudo, you'll get a persistence for a couple of minutes. You're going to have to keep entering your admin password. You're going to keep having to copy stuff across and make sure you got the file paths right, and you've done it for all the files. Take all the guesswork out of it. Be lazy. Just execute a single keyboard shortcut, and it's going to write out all of the configuration files at once. So again, let me just come back to the desktop version. DXY, yeah. So again, basically, we got the title, we got the startup, the startup options like overview, hide blocks. This is the important one: the property header -args, make directory key yes. And again, we basically got two sections. We've got the script, so we give the script a name. We set the language that's used, and basically go foo bar. Okay, I want to now deploy that. What I can do is I can do it individually. It's prompting me for the password now. I just entered it wrong. So tangle that. This one doesn't require a password because it's in the current directory. So for now, come back across demo script. See foo bar down here. So again, instead of me manually going to that location, editing the file, all I have to do is I have a sort of dashboard basically. And I can just, tangle the whole thing, just be lazy. So again, we can either tangle the entire document, Control-C, Control-V-T, or we can tangle individual code blocks. So basically, when I've got my root files, all I do is just Control-C, Control-V-T, done. That's it. Creates all the directories, copies all the files across, sets the permissions in one go in 2 seconds. Beat that. Yeah, so demo script. See, I've edited it. Just makes it super simple to do stuff. Is by far the fastest way I know of deploying stuff. Again, the advantages are you're going to have everything in a single file. Deploy it all with single keystroke. You've got a backup. So you can see here for my root config files, I've got the directory structure created in the Git repository, so I can see exactly what's going to go where. It also means that for, if I need to, I can just copy stuff across manually the old school way. But I'm not going to do that because being British, we are the laziest workers in the world, according to our government. Damn right we are. Why am I going to spend time copying all these files across manually, setting the permissions, all that kind of stuff, when I can do it in 2 seconds? So much more convenient way to do that. Again, I've got the complete directory structure in the Git repository, so I've got multiple levels of backup. I have all the files in the Git repository. I've got them all in the text file. I can push all these to GitHub or my other local machine on my network. So just eliminate any mistakes, which is something good. So it's a really, really good way of having multiple levels of backup, having a record of all your changes. So again, another thing is, it's very easy to make a mistake, and at 2 o'clock in the morning you do something and then something's broken, you can't remember what the hell you did. This way you've got a record of all your changes in Git. You can go back to any point in history, and it's a much better way of managing stuff and it's basically how I manage all my dot files, and again it's how I manage all my root files, so doas, all my bin scripts, so all these scripts here, and for, like for VPN, you can see here we've got all the syntax highlighting. Then I can just deploy them. I can deploy them individually. Control U, Control C, Control T on these source code blocks. If I'm working on an individual file and I want to write it out, or I can just write out the whole lot at once. So, X sessions will have stuff for, resolve, your DH client, DNS proxy, all your system D stuff, login.conf, things like DNS proxy service, all that kind of stuff. I've got it all in one document. Much easier to handle. So instead of opening multiple files and editing them all, I just open one file. Instead of copying all these files across by hand, setting the permissions, all that kind of stuff, I just run a single keyboard shortcut. It's done. I can't think of an easier way to manage your stuff than using Emacs, Orgbabble, NoWeb, and tangling stuff. And you may use a different text editor, but can your text editor do this? No. It is a simple answer. The org syntax is unique to Emacs, so it's not something that other editors have. We have all the advantage of syntax highlighting for stuff. Setting multiple languages. We have NoWeb, which allows us to deploy source code blocks to multiple locations at once. This is basically like a dashboard of your dot files. Best way to think of it. You just manage them all from this document, tangle them into your password, done. Much easier than going to all of those different locations, editing 20 or 30 files manually, perhaps making a mistake, not having any record of what you've done, having to set the permissions, create folders, all that kind of palaver. This takes out all the guesswork, and again, it's just much easier to handle. So if I just come back to this one, so as you can see, it was just really easy for me to edit stuff. So bar humbug, I hate Christmas, and especially Brussels sprouts. So now I can just come across here, demo script 2. You can see here, I wasn't prompted for my password. So again, this is what I was talking about, is another advantage of Emacs, is that it's cached my DOAS configuration and my DOAS password. I don't have persistent set up with DOAS. So normally I'd have to enter my password every time I use DOAS to edit these files. I'm using Emacs. So, and if I just run demo script 2, see bar humbug, I hate Christmas, and especially Brussels sprouts, with especially badly spelled. So that's managing your dot files, your root dot files with Emacs, and why it's just a no-brainer, and it's much faster. I said all I've got to do is run a keyboard shortcut, put in my password, it's done. So if I want to deploy stuff to another machine, all I've got to do is copy this file across, tangle it, and it's copied all my config files into place. Then I just install things, like Unbound or DNS proxy. I just install the programs, and all the configuration files are in the right place. So that's the best way to manage your root dot files using Emacs. All from one place, takes all guesswork out. And again, if you're lazy like me, then this is the way to go. If you can beat the speed of this to deploy stuff, yeah, you're having a laugh. You're not going to, basically. You're not going to be able to use Vim or something to actually deploy your stuff faster, have all the convenience of having everything in one file with the syntax highlighting, stuff to create the directories and the permissions. You're not going to be able to basically type on the keyboard faster than I can run a single keyboard shortcut to copy all those files across. It's not going to happen. So if you're lazy and you just want a way to set everything up from a single config file, then this is the way to go. So if you're using Vim, sorry Vim users, but it's true, Emacs does kick Vim's ass up and down the street and back again. So if you're using another text editor, this may be one of the reasons to have a look at Emacs, because it's the £500 gorilla in the room. It really is. Other text editors just don't hold a candle to it. So, Emacs is like over 40 years old now, and it's got features that other stuff doesn't have, and it's not difficult to get your head around. You've got evil mode, so you've got your Vim key bindings, all that kind of stuff. It's easy to set stuff up and get the hang of. And the other issue is running Emacs as a GUI program is far, far better than running Vim in a terminal. One of the reasons why is the fonts. You're not going to get fonts this good looking in the terminal. So the other thing is you have keyboard shortcuts that you can use in a GUI application that you just can't use in the terminal. So this case, using Emacs as a GUI application trumps using any editor in a terminal, hands down, no contest. You are not going to get fonts looking this good in the terminal. Not going to be able to zoom in, zoom out, that kind of stuff. Have nice looking fonts, have the syntax highlighting, all those features that Emacs has got, and just be able to deploy all your stuff with a single keyboard shortcut. So Control-C, Control-V, T. That's going to write out all that stuff to the root directory and also the current directory, which is the Git repository. Or you can just come through and individually tangle code blocks one at a time by running Control-U, Control-C, Control-V, T, and that's going to basically write everything out at once. And that's basically how I use Emacs to handle all my root configuration files, and why you might want to have a look at it. If you want to be able to deploy stuff with a single keyboard shortcut, instead of spending half an hour or an hour copying stuff across manually and setting the permissions. So that's why I use Emacs, and I use Emacs to manage all my .files for my home configuration and also my root .files as well.